It seems to be that it's 4 o'clock. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. See if anybody else pops on. All right, I think we're going to get started here. All right, I want to welcome you to the first webinar that is sponsored by Learning Disabilities Association of Iowa. To commemorate the Learning Disabilities Awareness Month, which is October, the Learning Disabilities Association of Iowa is pleased to present a 4-part webinar series on executive functioning. Today's focus is on routines, with the upcoming sessions over the next 3 weeks on Tuesday from 4 to 5 they will cover working memory, organization, and goal setting with self-talk and self-monitoring. We're excited for this opportunity, and this is our first attempt at it, so we hope that it all goes very well for all of us and that you learn something new or can even at least have one aha moment today, and will continue to join us for the next 3 webinars in the coming weeks. They're going to all kind of tie together. But before we get started, I wanted to have a couple of housekeeping items that I need to go over. So there is a Q&A at the bottom, I believe, of everybody's screen, and we would encourage any questions throughout the webinar be put in the Q&A. Kim Miller, another board member, has, I believe, dropped in the participation folder in the chat. And it includes my PowerPoint and the handouts that are included in the presentation. I wanted everybody to walk away with something that they could take back to their classroom and possibly put into practice tomorrow. This will be recorded and sent out to you after the presentation in a follow-up email that will also include a short survey about the topic of routines. So each Tuesday we will send out the recorded webinar, and then also a little short survey for us to get some feedback. And if you would like to receive a certificate of participation, please email info@ldaiowa.org, and that will also be included in the email as well. I think people are handling the chat for me. So I think we are ready to get started and jump right in. The first thing I want to do is I want to introduce myself. I'm Amy Eaton, and I'm a current board member. I serve as the first vice president. This is my 32nd year in education, so I have taught both in the regular classroom or general education, but most of my career has been in the special education field. For 10 years, I have done special education consultant at both Northwest AEA over in Sioux City area, and I currently work at Heartland AEA as a special ed consultant here in the Des Moines area. I have been on the board for at least, I think, over 15 years. I can't even remember how long it's been, but I've served several different offices and in as officers in this organization, and it continues to be a passion of mine. So I hope that you enjoy as we go forward in this. I want to, about executive functioning, I wanted to touch a little bit about executive functioning before we take a deeper dive into actual routines and why they're important and how they relate to executive functioning. First, that definition. We called our webinar series the air traffic control system, and it is the brain's air traffic control system, managing key mental processes such as our working memory, our self-control, and our cognitive flexibility. And these skills all help us with the executive functioning skills of organization, strategizing, and connecting those past experiences with our current experiences or our actions that need to happen. We also, though executive functioning is not considered a learning disability itself, executive functioning challenges frequently appear alongside learning disabilities and ADHD and many other diagnoses as well. But many characteristics of those two diagnoses are interchangeable for many of our students. You'll see if one is diagnosed with maybe dyslexia, then they also have some executive functioning, they have ADHD, it all kind of, it's kind of all coexists. Some of the common signs and characteristics include what we see not only our unique learners, but a lot of our learners. They struggle with organization, time management, focus, memory, emotional regulation, social skills, impulsivity, and problem solving. None of that, it probably sounds new to you because we have a lot of students that struggle with that. And many students struggle executive functioning that challenges that impact, and it impacts their learning and then their behavior as well. So part of teaching the targeted support or routines and interventions can improve those academic successes and reduce stress, anxiety, and frustration for all learners in the classroom. So we're going to start off with a little video. And since today is all about routines, I thought it would be appropriate to see how it looks like if we flip-flopped and the teachers got to act like the students. So I am sure that many of you, now that we're in the first week of October, can relate to some of these that have already happened this year or that you know will be coming. And I just wanted you to be thinking about routines, what routines you see that may or may not have been taught, or, you know, just have a little laugh at the end of our day. So here we go.
Hey, I need to fix my grade.
The end of the term was yesterday.
But I need to fix my grade.
Right, so that's it. That's the deeper meaning behind the book. That's the whole point of the book. Does anyone have any questions?
Can I go to the bathroom?
Hey, Miss Alderson. I was wondering, I was looking online, and my grade still hasn't changed.
Okay.
Well, when are you going to put in the paper?
You mean that paper that you turned in today that was due 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I'll get to it. Everyone turn to page 142. That's page 142. Scott, make sure you're on page 142. Okay, now that we're all, yes?
What page are we on?
What if I did some extra credit? Would that bring my grade up?
Could you please take off your hat?
What? It's a school hat.
Hey, so I'm like gonna be gone a couple weeks from Wednesday. Can you tell me what I'm gonna miss?
All right, could everyone please pull out a piece of paper and a pencil?
I don't have a pencil.
I don't have any paper.
You know, I was up really late last night, and I am so tired. I'm so tired. Can we just take a little nap?
Yes. Yeah.
Aubrey, could you please put your phone away?
I can't. I'm texting my mom. It's really important.
Hey, Teach. I was absent from school yesterday. Did we do anything important?
All right, so now everybody, what are you doing?
The bell's gonna ring.
In 8 minutes.
What if I cleaned your desk for you?
The end of the term was yesterday. I'm sorry, there's nothing.
All right, so I'm going to stop there. Hopefully you got a little bit of a laugh. You were off, and you were off to a better start than that classroom was. However, I just wanted us to start to think about routines and how many routines that we have throughout our day and even just in our classrooms. So before we move on, like every good presentation, I'm going to have you take a little time to participate. This will be the only time you have to participate. But what I would like you to do is to think about a routine that you have already taught this year, or one or more of the routines that you saw in this video, which might have been taught or not taught, that maybe needs to be taught. And I want you to type it into the chat right now. And when I going to count down from 3, and then I'm just going to say go. So go ahead, and I'm going to give you a couple seconds to get something written in there. And then when I say 3, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, go ahead and press enter, and let's see what we have. What kinds of, yeah, lunchroom. Totally. Yeah, lots of different, yeah, absolutely. Lunchroom routines, the assignments, how to completing assignments, what do I do? Class dismissal, working first, then earning a break to play, teaching that independent. Yeah, absolutely. There's all sorts of routines that we teach to make our lives easier. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of hit on some of those. And so what to expect during the next 45 minutes or so in this webinar. I'm going to give you a little rundown here. I'm first going to talk about why routines are important in relation to executive functioning. But before I talk about, we're going to talk about school-wide, classroom, and individual routines for all learners. And then I'm going to explain the importance of that explicitly teaching the routine and how to customize it for your own needs in your classroom. And finally, we're going to end the webinar by addressing what it looks like in adapting routines for our unique learners that we see in special education. And as you can see, we have a lot to cover and a short amount of time to do it. So we're going to jump right in. So why we start our series on executive functioning with routines when it's not even one of the executive functioning focuses. I wanted to touch quickly on how developing routines can directly be related to several areas of our executive functioning for our students on a daily basis. The first one is that organization and planning. When we provide clear, predictable structures that helps our students understand what is expected, we can support and they can plan ahead. The working memory. This frees up working memory to focus on learning and problem solving. If we have routines set, the self-control and emotional regulation, that it encourages them to have self-control, not get so frustrated, and be able to regulate their emotions. Task initiation and flexibility. Routines can help students get started on tasks quickly because they know what steps to follow. If we have taught that and they know what is expected and it's predictable, over time, they can learn to adapt those routines when changes occur and continue to have that flexibility in their thinking. And then, of course, one of the things that so many of our students struggle with is time management. So regular routines can help us with time management for our students, but it also can help us with time management for our classes. And it helps manage time by allocating specific periods for activities, helping them develop a sense of pacing and deadlines, which then continues to make them independent, lifelong learners. So I'm going to talk to you and we're going to start like a funnel. I'm going to start wide, like school-wide, then we're going to go to classroom, and then we're going to go to individual with our unique learners. And when we look at school-wide routines, we know that a lot of them are have been put into place already. That is a beginning of the year kind of strategy that lots of schools and teachers tackle first. But they can create consistent and positive environment where everybody knows what the behaviors are expected. I remember as a teacher, my special education students spent a lot of time in their regular classrooms because they needed to learn what their school-wide expectations were, the same as their peers, their typical peers. And that just helps reduce confusion and sometimes, and a lot of times with misbehavior. It promotes that fairness and equity by applying the same standards to all students and all staff. They're all getting the same message. We used to call it like boot camp, and they'd go from station to station to station to station for school-wide expectations, and the same person would share that or teach that, explicitly teach that area, so everybody heard the same expectations. It supports student learning and success by minimizing the disruptions, encouraging respectful interaction. So if I see a student in the hallway that I maybe didn't explicitly teach hallway behavior, I know I can say zero. If it's a zero volume, they know what that is without having to be, disrespectful to me. It builds a strong school culture that fosters respect, responsibility, and safety for everyone. And I think that I like this part too, is because it helps teachers collaborate. They get to have that unified approach to discipline and support. So it's not Mr. John over here teaches it this way in the building and Miss Amy over here teaches it another way. Everybody collaborates and they teach it as a unified approach. And then, as always, we are teaching and preparing students for future environments. So we're not just teaching them about the days here that you're at school, but we're wanting them to be lifelong learners. And it's important for that social and behavioral skills in the future as well. So I just slapped up a couple ideas just so you can get an idea. Nothing new. Some of them can be really simple. As you can see, they say, I am safe, I'm responsible, and I'm respectful. As some of them get a little bit more detailed, and they're for different ages, probably for different age groups. They have different descriptors under them. And what's nice is that as a collaboration of teachers, you guys have probably made those different descriptors and had buy-in from people on your staff. So they all have a common overall theme. All right. I'm going to jump to classroom routines. And as we move to thinking about classroom routines, this is really where the heart of, I feel like as a teacher, as a former teacher that was in a classroom, I feel like it really falls on us as teachers. And some of the things that we need to think about when we're thinking about creating classroom routines, we need to think about that predictability. Create that predictability for all of our kids. Routines can help establish a predictable environment where students know what to expect. And you're going to hear the word anxiety and disruptions and behaviors many times throughout when I talk, because so many of our students, especially since COVID, have had so much anxiety about coming back to school and the expectations. And so if we can make them predictable, that just reduces that anxiety for our students. It saves us time. Oh my gosh, if we have routines in place, less time is spent on giving the instructions and blah, blah, blah to them and managing the transitions. Nope, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to go there, and allowing more time for teaching and learning. I know one of the first routines that I taught in my special ed classroom is that how to enter my room, because I had a specific routine that I wanted. I was usually finishing up a group at a table, and I didn't need to be teaching and worrying about what the kids were doing when they came in. So to save time for them, and I know that I only have that allotted time that I get to see them, I had something right inside the door. They grabbed a piece of paper, depended what age they were, because I did K through 6. And they knew what they were to do. Some were tracing their names, some were copying their names, some were writing their names. Some of them had moved on to names and addresses. Some of them knew their birthdays. So it was differentiated within each student. But my classroom rule was grab a paper, get your pencil, go to the table. I'm finishing up here, and then I will be over and we'll start our lesson. It enhances that classroom management, just like I said, and it builds student independence. I loved when my students week 4, week 5, they were coming in, they were getting their stuff, they were being silly and messing around, and they were fostering that independence within the tasks that I had asked them to do. It supports consistency because they knew no matter if I was there, if it was an associate that was in my room, if I was out working with another student out in the classroom, or if it was a substitute, that's exactly what the same routine that they had every time that they came into my room. So they thrive on that structure. And we know so many students that thrive with the structure set up. And it improves the focus. When students know that flow of what is expected, they can focus more on their learning rather than figuring out what to do next. Because as you know, many of our students tend to be somewhat lost throughout the day. So after all of that, I just kind of wanted to share a couple of different levels in which we see these classroom routines. These range on this page from a routine, probably a kindergarten or first grade, on their morning routine that had pictures on it, then the big words, but very short and concise. To the slide that's blue that clearly was from a PowerPoint that probably was for middle schooler or older on what the routine is during instruction. Clearly, we couldn't present the same information to our lower level kids as we could our upper level kids. But what I liked is I found another routine, and is that you can make a poster and somebody can fill it in like champs. This one of the schools that I work in right now, that's their classroom posters. And then each teacher gets to fill in. It's still uniform, but they get to fill in what's important to them. And then I like the one that the Velcro pulls off, which is then it matches what they can have each day, what their special is going to be, or the related arts. So it can be however you want to, as long as it's short, concise, and consistent. So after we talk about the school-wide and the classroom, we want to know about how. How do we make a classroom? Do we just Google on Teachers Pay Teachers and or AI or whatever? I know that every classroom is unique, and so are your learners. So I can't sit here today and say this is exactly how you need to do a routine, how to create a routine. But what I can do is help you guide in some practical ideas on how to get started or what some of the routines are. So if the first thing that I always think about is how am I going to do a routine? Well, what kind of routine do I need? And then I started thinking of this list, and I will pop it up here for you. And I thought, okay, well, this is a little bit out of, I mean, this is not even an exhausted routine. So I have broken it up into school-wide, classroom, and independent. And I just think of all the other things that you guys, I mean, that's not even on this list that could be added. I wanted to share because sometimes it's not, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, or something can come and you say, oh yeah, sharpening pencils. That might not be something that's important to somebody, but it might be very important to somebody else. So I wanted to share, a list that would maybe not be, that could perk some interest. I like fast finishers. Oh, do we have fast finishers in our world of teaching? And I, being a special ed teacher, I will always work on the other end of sometimes of those kids who work and work and work and never get done. But boy, I need a routine for what's going to happen when my kids get done really quick and I'm still working on, in a small group with my other ones. So this is just a food for thought kind of handout. And I know that we could spend every day, all day teaching routines if we taught every single one of these. So as professionals and leaders of our own classrooms, we have to choose which ones are going to make the most impact for our classroom and our instruction and our students. So let me get back here to the second. The second how I wanted to talk to you about is, and I thought this was an interesting, and this is something that I have never done in my own classroom, like physically, but probably I have thought through it, is to ask questions to customize your specific classroom. So I put this document into the presentation as I think this is where that uniqueness starts to take place for each of us and our own classrooms. So as I stated earlier, there's no right or wrong way to decide what routine or how it needs to be done, but maybe some of these questions can help guide you in how you even if a routine is necessary. And I just thought it was a nice way of looking at why I want to teach a different routine. I wanted to go down to the bottom and think about homework. I saw that on the chat. You know, what do I do for homework, or how do I get assignments? So we have expectations, we have missing ones, we have late ones. So we would, maybe I just start to think about, and even with my students, I start to think, how do I know what homework how do I know where my homework is each week? Do I have an organization system for my students? Where do my students find the homework in the classroom? What will happen if the homework is not handed in? Do they get docked 50%? Have I taught that? Do they get to turn it in a day late and they still get, there's all sorts of things. What should be used in the homework book? What should, how should homework be set out each week? So there's all sorts. And then if you have an absent student, how do you catch them up? How will they get their homework? So I just thought these were really cool, kind of thought-provoking questions on how am I going to teach bathroom or transitions in my classroom? And you could do that as adults, or you can do that even as with your students. The next piece is this explicit teaching. And now that we've picked a routine, we've asked the questions like, well, how am I going to do that? And I'm planning for it. And now I'm going to explicitly teach. And this is where I feel like as teachers, and I was guilty of it too, I just didn't spend enough time teaching this, explicitly teaching. I think this and the next step are kind of the forgotten steps, that explicitly teaching and then that practice, practice, practice. We explicitly teach content. I teach reading and math and all the things, and we explicitly teach that to our students. And we do lots of repeated practice and going back and, doing some review. So it's like an aha moment is why aren't we explicitly teaching our routines? So I just was going to quick go through what it looked like to teach a routine in explicitly teaching. The first thing you would do is you would introduce the routine. You're going to make this big again so you don't have to see my family on the background. There you go. So we're going to introduce the routine. You're going to explain the purpose. Instead of just talking at the students, you're going to talk with the students. You're going to say things like, well, this routine helps us start class quickly and it gets us going, quickly and calmly. Describe when and where the routine will be used. So when I ding my little, bell, that's when I want you to start the routine, and it should take us 15 to 20 seconds. You're going to talk about when and where. Then you're going to model the routine as an adult. You're going to demonstrate each step clearly and slowly. You're going to use think alouds to explain, well, why would I be doing this? Why do I need to stop and say hi to the teacher in the morning if it's entering the classroom? Or why can't, and then I always did the ones that weren't supposed to be, like you walk into the classroom. Well, then I run into the classroom and then they would tell me why wouldn't we run into the classroom, that kind of thing. And then you guide the practice. We have a few students that practice, a small group of students practicing the routine together, giving feedback, positive or corrective feedback as it needs to be. And then that independent practice, and to try the routine on their own, and kind of like almost like a role playing. And then we're going to monitor and provide support as needed. And then the big thing is to review and reinforce. You're going to regularly review and the routine, especially in the first few weeks. I think so many teachers, I just think back of all the teachers, including me, that said, well, they should know that. I've already taught that. We have to go back and repeat and practice over and over and over again, and use that praise and reminders to reinforce what we are expecting for that execution. Okay, so now I'm going to have you watch this short little video that I thought this young teacher did a nice job. It's nothing super, complex. It's just a simple routine in his classroom on how to get attention. I thought he did a really nice job of explicitly teaching the attention getting routine for his specific classroom. He introduced it, he modeled it, they experienced some guided practice with some feedback, and then they went back to talking again, and they independently practiced it with some positive reinforcement. So I wanted to share. It works. Here we go.
Because attention-getting signals are so important, it's very important that you teach them correctly. Now sometimes I might say clap twice if you can hear me. Clap once. Clap once. Clap half. And then I can see who's listening and who's not. Yeah. Okay, so let's practice. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna practice it a little bit. Okay, go ahead and talk. Clap twice. Clap twice. Simple as that. Let's get to work. Go. That's how we do it. First month, you might do your attention getting signal over and over and over and over because you want it to be programmed. You want it to be a system, a routine that the kids are in. Clap twice. Clap twice. Clap half. Perfect. Then over time, with that practice, that attention getting signal will work. And it will work every time, and it will work for every group of students.
All right. And then I had come up with just a couple of options for how we could explicitly teach coming in the door, coming into your classroom. And the first one is teaching it with a list. And it's just really simple, concise, 8 steps to that. And then the second option, just to give you some ideas of how you could change it up or be more explicit if you have students that need that, is, or maybe you don't feel comfortable teaching it, or maybe you're going to pass it on to all of your community. Maybe all the 6th grade teachers are going to teach it the same way, and you all want to use the same words so it's consistent across the board. You just give them kind of like a script for them. So I made up a script that you could use if you wanted to. But I did throw in another fun little practice from PBIS. I'm sure most or all of you have heard of PBIS as a reinforcement system. And I don't know if any of you have played this, but I put it in here for you guys to use, that you could take this back to your class and do tomorrow with some of your routines. And it's just a quick little, you pick a class or a routine or some sort of time of the day. Maybe you just want to do like morning meeting or whatever. And you can do it across school wide. You could do it within your classroom, and you've practiced and taught this routine. And so they know it, and they know it. And now we're going to see, can they generalize it throughout if I want them to do it when they know I'm not looking? Because I always say to kids, do what you're supposed to do, even when adults aren't looking. And so you're going to introduce this game. You're going to say that, it's going to be kind of a point system, a little competitiveness. I don't know if any of you know me, but I might be a little competitive too. And so it's like you have student points and then you have teacher points. And what we're doing basically is we are trying to catch the students doing exactly what we've set them up to display for us. So you tell the students the game is starting. You might say, okay, I'm going to look for this during social studies time. It's a 45-minute chunk, or it's a 30-minute chunk. And when you see that student following the expectations, you give them a positive comment and a point. And you set that before you start. You say, okay, students need to get 5 points and we'll get 5 extra minutes at recess, or maybe you pass out a sticker or whatever it is. And but also the other thing is that if you see the unwanted behaviors, you can also give and say, boy, that was almost so close. Most of the students did that, but we still need to, have all of us do it. And so you might give the teacher a point, but we do not take points away. Once they earn them, they get it. And then you give a lot of positive, you provide lots of praise for them. And then at the end of the game, you say the time's up, whether you've set a timer or the class period's up, and then you go back and you review it and you say, did they experience the success? Did they do what they were supposed to? Did they get their 5 points? And then you give them the reward as well. So kind of a fun game. Another fun game that I always played when I taught general ed, because I just had few kids when I was in special ed classroom, is I did mystery person. And so what I did is I would say, okay, here's the behavior, or here's the routine that I'm going to look for today. And it might be from the morning till lunch. and it might be hallway. I seem to always be an issue with my 20 some kids is hallway. And I, out of the bucket, would take a name, and it's on a piece of paper, and I put it in my pocket. And so then I would say, throughout the morning, don't forget, when we're leaving the room or going out of the room, I'd say, don't forget, now I have my mystery person. And then at the end of the time, then I would say, you know what? Our mystery person did a really good job. Do you think, and then we would bring feedback from them on both sides of that. We might have struggled the first time, but the next 2 or 3 times they did a great job. And so then they get maybe a prize out of the prize box. And I usually made it pretty positive for everybody. But that's another fun game. Another thing, I could go on and on about all the things that I love to do to catch kids being good, but the biggest mistake that I see in routines is that I'm going to go back to it, is that we expect students to just know the routine after once being taught it. And we need to remember it takes practice, practice, practice to get our students to do what we want them to do. All right. So we're getting down to these individualized routines for our unique learners. This is really where it comes all together for me. I just made a quick little slide here that talks about how are ways that we can individualize so our unique learners are still learning the same routines that their peers are, but it might need to look a little bit different. So the first thing that always comes to mind are those visual schedules or those picture cards. We might need to simplify or break down the steps, divide those routines up into smaller, easier to follow parts. You might use verbal or gestural or even tactile prompts to guide the student through the routine. But they need to be consistent prompts that they get, and it might be from an associate, and it might be from you, and it might be from both of them. Sometimes it's even good to have it come from a peer. A lot of times we work at a very fast pace during the day, and we talk and talk and talk and talk, and we're going from this thing to another thing. So thinking about allowing some extra think time or wait time or time for transitions to really keep that timing and the pace, so our kiddos that struggle with processing speed, we can meet those needs as well. How's that going to look? We can integrate preferred activities. I remember some of my unique learners, they had a trouble in the hallway with their peers with their hands because they wanted to touch the person in front of them and they wanted to lean back on the person behind them. So I would just give them one, maybe like if they liked Mickey Mouse, I gave them Mickey Mouse as a transition, just to kind of give them something that they were interested in and they knew that they could then walk appropriately for, in the hallway with their peers. Positive celebrations and reinforcements. Collaborate across the board. If they're in therapy or family or what is consistently that works, collaborate with the other team members that work with this student. And build in options or choices. Do you want to walk in them? If we're working online, do you want to walk in the classroom or with the class, or would you like to be the last person or the first person? You can give them those options to set them up for success. And then we're going to also practice those routines outside of when the whole class is working on it. We're going to practice those independently to build those mastery and build their confidence in knowing that they know that routine and can do it the same as their peers. So I'm going to take this routine that we started with back in the routines earlier. And what I did is I'm going to take that same routine for entering the room and see how I want you to look at how I have kind of changed it for more of our unique learners. And the first one that I have here on the screen is that I just make it as a checkoff list. Some of our kids, I made that checkoff list so they may have it with an associate. They may be able to do it independently, hopefully by themselves eventually, and eventually want to fade some of those supports away. This allows the student to identify what step they're on. They can kind of follow, they can predict what comes next, and they know how much more there is to learn. We go, I always live by less is more. So we want to know, those students need to know how much do I need to do and when am I done with this and what's coming next, those predictabilities. And then I The other thing about this is sometimes I've laminated those and then they just check it off as they do it. Or I've had flaps where they just open up the flap for the next thing so they don't get overwhelmed if there's too many steps. But I wanted to just throw this up here, and you've probably looked at it as well in your participant folder. Is I just made the exact same routine, and I just made it very visual for a student. Lots of our kiddos need visual help, so I put all the things. You can do maybe just the door, stop at the door, wait your turn. I mean, but it also is nice to have some, as I've known over the years, I've recognized is eventually want to fade some of those visuals away and go to, and we talk about closing the gap, go to this the same as what their peers are. And so we want them to be able to read those words as well. So if we're matching the words with the picture, it just makes it much more doable for them. And so I just put this together. With the same 8 steps that we've had before for all those different lists. So everybody is being taught the same routine with the same expectations, but it may look a little different for some. All right. Get back to this. All right, so I'm just going to quickly go over this and so we can keep moving, but I just wanted to bring it up because I know that as special education teachers or parents or counselors or whoever, whatever we do as teachers, working with students and other adults, we always seem to have barriers. So one of the things that I wanted to bring to you are what would be some of the barriers to being successful with my routines, and how do I overcome those? So we've talked about all the things that need to happen to have a good routine. So when we talk about barriers, I think of the first thing is that inconsistency. Student A gets a conversation with teacher A and it's different than teacher B, and it's very inconsistent, and then it starts to confuse our students. Sometimes it's the lack of training or the practice of it. And sometimes when we talk about lack of training, I think of both students and adults. You know, I've worked with general education teachers more in my last role, really. I mean, a variety of them because I just had such a small group when I was a special ed teacher. And I have come to find out gen ed teachers are such good teachers, but they just don't know what they just don't know. And they want to learn on how to work with our unique learners. So special ed teachers, I'm kind of giving you a little nudge here and a little shout out to step out of your comfort zone, share some of those ideas. We think outside the box. So don't be afraid to share some of your ideas on how we think that it would work and if it works for our unique learners, I'm guessing that it probably works for many other learners in their classroom. If the expectations or the routines are unclear or very complex, that's very hard for our learners. And my mantra for teaching is less is more. Less words, more production. You know, we just don't need to talk to them. Of course, I'm just talking to you, but anyway, I'm failing on my mantra, but anyway. And then that failure to differentiate for our unique learners, just assuming that, well, if you're in my class, you can just do it the same way as my others. And you guys, change is hard. I've had a lot of changes in my career over time, and I know that change is hard, and it's hard for adults, and it's really hard for our learners. So we need to give grace to all people and just know that they will get it. We just have to keep moving along. And then how to overcome barriers. I'm going to let you read that list. I think I've gone over it, but I did want to pop this on, and I wanted to talk about how to involve students in creating routines. I do think, especially as the older they get, we need to engage them in part of that decision making. And I think these are just some quick ways that they can be involved. You can brainstorm, you can do role plays, you can do a routine poster. Some of the older kids and younger kids are very artistic. And so they would love to make, posters of the routines. Voting, what a neat way to get kids involved. Checklists, feedback circles of how did that work, and have kind of like a challenge. I can see now that I'm working with middle schoolers, I can see a teacher taking that back to their classroom and saying, okay, we need to figure out how we're going to get from transition from A to B in our community. I want you guys to come up into groups, and I want you to create your own design on what we're going to do and that routine. And the most important thing that I think that comes out of this is value our routines. We're not going to be able to teach everything that every kid needs to know, but the routines that we believe in and we value, they're going to believe in as well. And keep it simple. Use little, sayings, set them up for success, but keep everything as simple as possible. Less words on a poster. And what that will build is, it will build, I wanted to kind of end with this, is in the book, Executive Skills in Children and Adolescents, if you don't have it, by Peg Dawson, she's great in executive functioning. I found this simple view for success in your classroom and to how to build independent learners. And so I kind of put it into a little like math problem, is to have that predictable visual routines when we're teaching them, be consistent with the explicit teaching in the beginning, but to fade some of that as we go, be clear with our expectations and our routines, and less is more, and get the students involved in as much as we can, to consider making students, no matter what age, to be partners with us within that. I know that we tend to want to just say, okay, here's our rules, or here's our routines, but get them and be flexible when it doesn't work. And all that, if we have those 4 pieces, we're going to have a learning environment that supports and encourages students to access and use their own executive skills as independent learners. So I'm going to stop talking now for a minute, and I'm going to reach out to Kim and see if there's any questions. We have a little bit of time left. There's a couple other things that I wanted to show you before we got off. But Kim, if you want to pop on and let me know if there's any questions.
One question, Amy, is when you talked about the mystery person, and if they, made it or not made it, what if they didn't make it? What is that mystery person? Do you reveal their name at that point? Or how do you handle that?
Great question. We did not. I put it back in the bucket and said, you know what? We're just going to put this back in there, and we're going to give them another chance, and we're going to find somebody else. And, we just, no, I would never, no, that's a really good question. No. So if they did not get it, then I would just put the name back in the bucket, and they would have another chance to show me. I might pull them off to the side. I have been known to do that, and have a private conversation and say, hey, I noticed in the hallway, and give some corrective feedback. But yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Make sure anyone else has questions, put those in the Q&A. I'm going to give a couple more questions, but please add to those.
Okay.
So talking about the student that you had that did not follow the routine, say in the hallway, how do you handle that redirection that you were talking about? And also, what does PBIS stand for? Or how do you handle PBIS?
Yeah.
Some people that aren't familiar with what that is.
Sure. Positive school something system. How's that for you? If somebody knows exactly what it means, but it's I think it's something about positive school interaction system, something to that effect. You're right. I should know what that is. I will look at that if I don't get that in the Q&A for the answer. I would say model. I spend a lot of time coming, elbow to elbow with students, not shouting across the whole line. I tend to try to find a peer that might be able to help that student. We would practice, I would collaborate with the regular ed teacher, and if we needed to practice with our students separately, we would practice with our students separately, and so they would understand, so they would be able to then generalize those skills back into the class, or back in with their classmates. Positive behavior intervention system. Pretty good. I did pretty good, didn't I? Intervention supports. Yep. Interventions and supports. Good. And it's not a can, so just if you have not heard of PBIS, it's not a canned program. It's not like, here's your curriculum and this is how you're going to teach your routines and your school wide. You develop it for how you want it to look. It kind of is a guideline to how it is. It will help you kind of set some goals and kind of talk about, and it's layered, it's tiered. So there's a lot to it, but many schools in Iowa have taken off with PBIS over the years. I have a couple questions that were on before the webinar that I'm going to hit on. So one of them is what is the benefit of a routine for an elementary age student, and how should an adult navigate changes in the routine with a child? I think I think I kind of addressed that already, but I wanted to come back to it and circle back because I wanted to talk about changes in routines and that they are okay, and that it's okay to say, boy, we've been doing this and this just hasn't really worked out. What do you think we could do differently to make it work for us? And show kids that flexible thinking and how we can be flexible in our changes, and then go back to the steps of the teaching and lean on those first two steps of explaining the why and modeling for them, and then go ahead and change that routine. The next one is do you have tools to provide students and families that may help develop routines at school and home? And I believe that school and home they need to kind of be as one, and that they are more alike than what we think they are. And that if we teach routines and that are predictable and the kids know what to expect and become confident in that, that they can then take those routines from school and change them. If we talk about that flexible thinking, that they can change those to be routines at home. There have been many a times I've sent home picture routines for parents on, my mornings are a disaster. I cannot get my kid out of bed and get them to school and get them dressed and all the things. And all I do is say, get going, get going, get going. And we put a visual schedule or a visual routine in place, and they are able to do that pretty easily. And parents that support that and follow the same type of things, of the consistency, the clear expectations, really have shared that they've had success. Check off lists for older kids at home, beautiful. You can't argue with them. Do this, do this, do this order. This is what our expectation is when you get home. You get a snack, you do 10 minutes of this, you get to go play outside, you come back, and it seems to just take the arguing or the bantering back and forth out of it. The last question that I had is what different accommodations and modifications are useful for routines? And I think we hit that. And I just want to kind of, I'll check to see if there's any more questions before, but I want to end with visuals, visuals, visuals. We need to be way better about getting kids visuals and taking that cognition out of having to have them read words until they become comfortable and can match that visual with the writing, and they'll be much more successful. Kim, do I have any other questions before I move on?
I think that is all the questions that I've seen.
Okay. Oh, it's clicking on me. I don't know what that means. Okay. Here's just my reference page. A couple things by Peg Dawson. I love her, and I got to actually hear her speak since I've been at Heartland AEA, and she's brilliant and very down to earth. And I even put her email because she will email people back if you have specific questions for her on executive functioning. So the last thing I wanted to show you before we run out of time, because I want to be cognizant of our time, and it looks like we have about 6 minutes left or so, is I wanted to give you some ways to follow us, the Learning Disabilities Association of Iowa, on social media. So on this page, you will see our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter. We have a fabulous social media person that is very good about posting information from other states, information from national, about on our pages, and sometimes it can be really good articles, or it can be practical ideas, or sometimes this month you're going to see a lot of just like myths and truths about learning disabilities, and because it's Learning Disabilities Month. I wanted to quick jump on our website and show you what our website looks like. For a couple of reasons. We do have our own Learning Disabilities Association of Iowa website, and there's a lot of free information on here. We have a newsletter that goes out twice a year in the fall. We just sent one out this last week, and we have one in the spring. A couple of buttons that I wanted to show you up here. We are a nonprofit organization, and we rely on our own fundraisers and donations that we can get. So if you feel inclined to donate, we would love to have that. The other thing is that I wanted to show you that we would love to have any or all of you in any capacity to join our Learning Disabilities Association of Iowa, to be a member, or if you want to get more involved, we would love that. The cost is only $55 a year. It does open up access to the Learning Disabilities Association of America, some things that once you're a member, you get access to. All the things, I do want to say, all the things on our website right now are free to anybody. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, October is Learning Disabilities Month. So you will see, if you follow us on social media, you'll see a lot of information coming out. Probably our board member, Shirley, is the one that does the social media. And she, I think, is putting at least something every day, if not more. The last thing that I wanted to, and there's archive, I mean, you can go, we have a big parenting project that another part of the board has been working on, and it's under the LDA resources and our projects. There's a lot here if you want to take the time and go through. We'd love for you to look at it. And the last thing that I wanted to do is show you that we have a YouTube channel. And I did tell you that this webinar is going to be recorded, and then when it's all done, we'll send it out to you, but we'll also upload it to our YouTube channel. And there are other we've done a series of videos on our channel, including a series on IEPs, the different parts of IEPs and their voiceover with a slide deck. And here's Kim Miller. She did a webinar. So there are some things, we're adding more as we go. We are trying to, we're trying to start this new webinar thing. So we're hoping that this continues. And so that's kind of what I wanted to share. So you kind of could get around. You can always, if you want to join Learning Disabilities, here's the email that I talked about earlier. If you want a certificate, you can email a certificate of participation. And Kim, did any other questions come in?
No other questions, but maybe just talk about next week.
Yep. So no more questions. So I just want to thank you for attending this webinar on routines. Next week will be on working memory and the thinking behind that. And from then on, we do organization, which all of us, even me included. And then the last one will be on goal setting, self-talk, and self-monitoring. And what we're hoping is that we can kind of build on each one. Again, if you sign up and you're not able, we will be recording it, but we would sure love for you to join us live and participate as much, or if you were able to. So I want to thank you. And if there's nothing else, I'm going to say goodbye.